OneNet is reaching almost its end. It was a huge research project, and its aim was to contribute to the creation of a single system for electricity where all stakeholders, all network users could contribute to the provision of ancillary services, what is usually referred to as flexibility in the public debate about electricity market design. Anibal, you played a very important role in work package 3 on market analysis, where you led a task actually on these topics. So I would like to ask you a few questions, if I can. First, what is flexibility, why it is important for the electricity system, and how it can be valorized, please?
Yeah, thank you, Nicolò. So maybe I'll start with why it is important. We know that there is a growing demand due to electrification and of the consumer energy space. So we know that the demand will be increasing significantly in the coming years. That will put stress on the grid and also on electricity prices. Higher demand drives electricity prices up higher. That's where flexibility plays an important role in these two fields. The first one is an ability to balance the consumption and demand. So with the varying, changing generation and also the changing demand, this flexibility can help flatten the two and match them. That's one. The second aspect is that it helps in alleviating the problems that the grid might face due to that increased consumption levels. So we already hear about congested grids and projected congestion grids. So you have one way to deal with that is to have network investments. Another one, which is supportive to network investments, is to use flexibility to help resolving those issues. So now what's flexibility? Is the ability of a user, which can be a generation entity, a consumption, a user, or a storage, to really change their schedules as a response to a signal they receive, a price signal and so on, or to provide a service to the grid. So that's where flexibility is defined, and that's the role it can play.
Thank you. But then how can we organize markets for flexibility? I know that in OneNet we explored some options, and we consider the opportunities and the challenges associated with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we defined why flexibility is important. We defined what is flexibility. The question that you are asking is how can we unlock it? How can we really bring it? How can we use it? And this is where flexibility markets play an important role, is that it provides a way for flexibility providers, so starting with end users that could be aggregated, to provide that service to the grid or to react to price signals that they can see. So aggregation plays a very important role there. But what we were saying as well is that this flexibility is increasingly being available, and traditionally it was provided by large-scale generation and large-scale industrial loads. Now it's more accessible to end consumers as well. So, and that's driven by electrification of their consumer space, but also by digitalization. They're able to actually react. So there's technological enablers that are in place that allow them to play that role. But now we need behavioral enablers. So how can you provide incentives and create mechanisms for them to be able to do that? So flexibility is being available from different areas of the grid, different voltage levels, low voltage, medium voltage, and high voltage. But it's also needed by different system operators, so TSOs and DSOs. So the point is how to bring that flexibility to them in the most cost-efficient way. And there's the two elements that play a very key important role there for TSOs and DSOs. So the first element is because they both need flexibility, their needs might be complementary. So there's the element of value stacking potential of flexibility that we talk about regularly, is the ability of one flexibility being provided to meet concurrently the needs of multiple system operators. That can drive costs down. The other element is grid safety of providing flexibility. So you have a system operator that can have access to flexibility outside their area of control, outside their grid. They need to make sure that by accessing that flexibility, by activating it, that they don't cause issues in those grids as well. So these two elements drive the need for TSO-DSO coordination there, which sets up how the flexibility market is being provided. So it could be, you can think about a common market setting where TSOs and DSOs can come together, jointly procuring flexibility, or you can think about a multi-layer process where you can provide priority access, for example, to some SOs to their local flexibility while it can be presented or made available to the next, in the next stage to the next SO and so on. So there are different ways to look at that problem. Each one of them present their advantages and disadvantages in terms of efficiency, entry barriers, consumer centricity, and so on. So all these elements have to be taken into account into the design of flexibility markets, let's say.
Thank you. And actually, you raise now a point, actually, even at the beginning, you said technological innovation, trends in energy demand give the possibility to also to end consumers to be part of this game. And actually, it's years now that in Europe we claim that we need to put consumers at the center of electricity markets. And then my question to you, Anibal, how can we define consumer centricity in the context of these flexibility markets? Is it possible to have consumer-centric flexibility markets? How can we improve, encourage consumer centricity in them?
Mm-hmm. It's definitely possible to have consumer-centric flexibility markets, but it depends how you define consumer centricity. Maybe let's start with the point that without the participation of consumers, these flexibility markets will not be able to reach their potential, their efficiency potential, their competitiveness potential. You need participation, otherwise they don't work. So the question is, how can you engage consumers? And these questions drive the definition of what consumer centricity is. And in our work in OneNet, actually, we went back to the question of, we created a set of questions to try to define consumer centricity and how does it materialize in the sense of electricity markets. So we found out that there's actually no clear definition of what consumer centricity was. So we started defining what a consumer is by checking legislation that we went back years back and the legislation available to try to create that. And then what consumer centricity can be, and then how it applies to electricity and flexibility markets. And here is the interesting thing that arises, is that when you look at consumer centricity in the general sense, in the sense of consumers being engaged in some transactions or some processes, well, if you want to define it in that setting, you would need to say that consumer centricity is a mechanism where it provides more and more control to consumers to elements in those transactions. But when you counter that with electricity markets, or in particular the case of providing services, the user might not have that much control over the attributes of products that could be traded. Because, for example, if you look at balancing products, you have requirements that you have to meet, ramp up requirements, time to act requirements, how long you should hold your service that's being provided, the time between, let's say, activations and so on. All these elements are maybe not so easy, they're not controllable, not tangible that you can change them. So this is the question, okay, can we still be consumer-centric even in the presence of those issues? And the answer is yes, and that could be provided through two things. The first one is how you design the market itself. And that's something that we saw in different parts of our analyses, is that you can look, as I was saying before, into a setting of a centralized market, a common market. But this kind of centralization and harmonization of the products being traded might make it difficult for small-scale users to participate. So there, if you start complementing those markets with local market layers, which can be more designed to accommodate local grid needs, but also the technical needs of local flexibility service providers, you can reduce their entry barriers and engage them more easily. That's one. The second one is aggregation, which plays a very important role, is because, as I said before, these technical requirements might be very difficult to meet when you're a single end user, or especially small-scale end user. But aggregation can help you with that. It can help you with meeting the minimum quantity requirements, granularity requirements, but also the technical time reaction requirements as well. So aggregators play a very important role also in bringing the message of consumer centricity and actually translating it into the way they deal with consumers, the way they set up their contracts, the way they control the assets and so on. And through these two mechanisms, we can say that yes, it is possible to have consumer-centric electricity markets and flexibility markets as well.
Thank you, Anibal. If I can summarize, electricity is not something immediately consumer-centric because it has such a big, let's say, technical requirements background, but still there are business models and possibilities. You mentioned aggregation that can make it possible, in a sense, for consumers to have a say on the type of transaction of the things that they are going to buy and sell in those markets. Thank you very much, Anibal.
Thank you, Nicolò.